The topical headline for CFS Plus is redesigning value, and within that a discussion also about growth and prosperity. My next guest has posed a question: why can't fashion respect the non-negotiable planetary boundaries? I'm very pleased to introduce Professor Kate Fletcher. Hi, Kate. Good to see you.
Hi, Eva. Yes, really delighted to be here.
So in the fall, before the COVID hit us, you launched a report called Earth Logic. And it actually was part of inspiring the first theme for the Copenhagen Fashion Summit when we called it Redesigning Growth. We changed that along the way to not sound tone deaf to the fact that the COVID crisis obviously created degrowth already in our industry, but we still find the agenda equally important. So can you unfold a little bit what Earth Logic is all about?
Absolutely. So what Earth Logic is, it's a radical invitation to business leaders, to governance, to designers, to the media, to citizens, to put Earth first and to transform the fashion sector. We think, Matilda Tam and I, my co-conspirator and long-time collaborator who wrote Earth Logic, we think that it's urgent that we begin to deal with things within the fashion sector differently. And this is because of the scale of the problem that we face. And actually also because the primary obstacle to delivering change at scale and at pace is growth logic, is the logic of economic growth. And what growth logic is, it's a view of more, of expansionist, increasing use of resources continuously. And I think it was the systems thinker Donella Meadows who said that growth is one of the stupidest purposes ever invented in our culture. And she followed that up by saying that there has to be an enough. And she suggested that when we talk about growth and if we think about growth, we should ask lots of questions of it. We should say things like, who for? What's the purpose? When and how? And who pays the cost? And what about the environmental impacts? And these are questions, of course, that are still dogging us today.
But don't you think that growth and greed it's a side of humanity that we want more? Isn't it difficult to sort of move away from growth entirely?
Well, perhaps not. I think that if you look to the sorts of features in society where you think about what are the traits of happiness, for instance, generally people point to 5 things, none of which are in any way associated with growth or greed. They're all about connecting to others around you, to being physical in your body, to noticing the world around you, to sharing with others, and to learning new skills. So these aren't things that are reliant on growth, and they're the things that are at the source of well-being. We really have to recognise and honour the fact that we're not going to get anywhere unless we really call out growth as the central point with which we need to start the conversation.
There's something about it that feels difficult to take out of the way at least the Western world has built our societies, you could even say the capitalistic system in a way. So how do you propose that we do that? How do we make that exercise?
Well, I suppose maybe it's worth busting a few myths around growth and its correlation with well-being, and it's synonymous with this idea that it's a positive step in society. I think when you look at like a meta-analysis of studies which look at the relationship between income levels, and in particular rising income levels and happiness, what they show is that beyond basic levels of income, so once you've got basic levels of income, this is increasing growth beyond that point, every increase in growth generally doesn't lead to much, if any, of an increase in happiness. And in fact, sometimes it can lead to the opposite effect. It can actually reduce the levels of happiness. And going further, a materialistic mindset has been shown to positively correlate with higher levels of antidepressant use, for instance, and with having fewer friends. And these are all the things that are very much associated with the growth logic mindset. It's not only that, of course, it's understanding that a growing economy is very frequently associated with growing or spreading environmental concerns. So when an economy grows, it has a larger material footprint, and this also then leads to whole sets of other challenges that we know about, like climate change, for instance, water scarcity, issues to do with chemical pollution. So it's not in any way clear that growth is solely a positive effect on our society. It brings with it a whole negative train of issues too. We have to work at the level of the system and the paradigm. So this means not only working with materials or supply chain issues, but also asking the questions that are about the goal and the purpose of the system that we're working in. So what Matilda and I propose within Earth Logic is that we substitute growth logic, which up to this point has been the purpose of the paradigm that we're working in, with Earth Logic instead. And that we put Earth and thriving of all its peoples first.
Fashion industry, for instance, is a big driver for growth and development in countries for something that also, lifts humans out of poverty and so on. So how do we balance that with this notion of degrowing or producing less stuff, or creating less of that traditional growth?
If you look in ecological systems, what you see that an organism will grow within its niche until it's fulfilled the size of its niche, and then it stops growing, and then it switches into a new system, a system of maintenance of its size. It doesn't try to grow any further. And so one of the things that we see is that we have to begin to understand that there's lots of different strategies and stages within different economies that we need to sustain at the same time.
I just keep thinking, how do we put that into real life? We have companies who either have different owners that wants to be prosperous, or we have shareholders investing in the bigger companies that also pursue sort of a growth margin. We have countries who are trying to lift their population out of poverty by growing, in manufacturing, for instance, or so on. How do we tell all these people to sort of halt, or enough is enough?
Plainly, it's not the most easy conversation to begin, but it's one that we need to pursue. We need to talk frankly and respectfully, and we need to bring in lots of different people into the conversation. I think one of the things that happens often is that we just talk to people sort of a bit like us, people who reflect the same perspective, and it's obviously vital that we don't just do that, and that we begin together to develop or uncover or find old methods and ideas around thinking about what success could be like if it wasn't measured in growth format. Perhaps we can even think about how corporations can maybe define a living purpose for business. To you, it's me, it's everybody who's listening here. It's very easy often for us to think, oh no, it's someone else, somewhere else on the planet who's going to take a lead on this. But that's not the case. It's for all of us to take our role. And within the pandemic, I think what we've seen is that all sectors of society have been able to mobilize fast and get behind health as a way to change behavior, to re-divert flows of cash and other things. We've seen governments act, we've seen citizens groups act. And actually, I think maybe what we see is that people can act.
So what would be your advice to CEOs and politicians listening in? What should they implement rather today than tomorrow?
Oh, I think, CEOs and politicians are always concerned about their jobs and their political careers, aren't they? And understandably so. And I think that their jobs and their political careers, they will be saved by them making the important decisions, by them taking a chance, and by remodulating some of the preferences that they have towards less consumptive practices. I think a shift from a system which is not so much concerned with accumulation as towards the maintenance of what we already have provide loads of really exciting business opportunities. I also think that maybe they should take stock from what's happened in the green energy sector. What we've seen is so many jobs created in a transition towards the production of renewable energy compared to fossil fuel energy, that I think that there's all signs of hope that this could happen also for all manner of sectors, including fashion.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time.
All right, no worries.